What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Self Transformation Radio. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle. I hope you don't hear my air conditioner in the background, but if you do, just know that it's really freaking hot, and I would have turned it off if I could have survived without it in the van. Well, I just published chapter 3 of my book, and it now has a title. That's the most exciting part of today's episode, is that it has a title. The subtitle or the subheading or whatever will probably be edited a little bit. I'm not 100% sure what the subtitle is going to be, but I know that the book, keeping in mind that it's a memoir, is called Edited. And right now, the subtitle is How I Started a Proofreading Business and Almost Got Deleted. Yeah, I really feel like that was a good title to bridge all of the pieces of my journey so far together. It just makes sense to me to call it something like that because 10 years ago when I started my proofreading company, and this doesn't even count the years I spent actually doing proofreading, whether it was part-time or full-time, because I started proofreading in 2009 as a transcript proofreader, not in 2014 when I started Proofread Anywhere. So it's been a long time of proofreading and experience. So I don't want to spoil too much with the title. There's actually part of this upcoming chapter that I'm about to share with you that will give you some insight into why I decided to call it Edited, other than, of course, its obvious connection to the world of proofreading and content creation. So, okay, without further ado, chapter 3, Waking Up is Hard to Do. The day after I decided not to sue him and triumphantly wrote about it, I suddenly felt like maybe I should. I called an attorney, left a message. An attorney called me back, 4 missed calls. It was all very strange. I found myself back on Erica's back porch this past weekend. All of this, writing, porch sitting, etc., has been such a part of my process for, processing all of this. I'm a different person than I was a few weeks ago when I couldn't yet see clearly. I recently looked over emails I'd sent in 2020, even some emails I'd exchanged with him. I was definitely not in my right mind. I could tell I was having issues processing my emotions following traumatic experiences. I was having issues recognizing abuse, gaslighting, manipulation. I can see how under his spell I was. But what I also saw is that I did call him out on the red flags, some of them anyway. I saw the shifty way he diverted my attention each time and never took responsibility. A lot of my questions remained unanswered. When it comes to waking up from the spell of a sociopath, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, meaning once the scales fall off, that's it. Your life is never the same. It completely repaints your perception of your past. It's all much clearer now. Your self-esteem improves instantly because it's like waking up from a horrible dream, one you're not quite convinced wasn't real. I stared at Erica from across the couch. You mean he never really cared about me at all? He was just saying what he needed to say to make sure I'd do what he wanted? Pretty much, Erica replied. In my pre-van days, when I had my Airstream, I went camping with him one weekend in mid-August at Lake Louisa State Park. He was supposed to sleep outside in a tent. He didn't. One of the things he whispered to me that night was, "I like making you feel safe." That's what he needed me to believe anyway, to ensure he could get his way with me and my business. And it worked. For that night, anyway. But I recently found an old email from a few weeks after the Airstream weekend. All the alarm bells were sounding. He was adept at snuffing out that sound. This is what my intuition was screaming. And this is copied directly from my emails to him. I do not feel comfortable or safe working with you. I cannot handle my past traumas being used against me anymore. I cannot and will not allow you to use my team members, past and present, against me as weapons in a belittling fashion. I will not tolerate your constant accusations and attacks on my character. I will not tolerate constant reminders of my inadequacy in comparison to other women. I will not tolerate your unforgiving attitude regarding my decisions and desires, past and present. All of this creates a toxic work environment, and I'm tired of screaming at my computer screen when I know you don't care how I actually feel and think it's funny to hurt me. I'm tired of crying so much because your words cut me so deeply, and I'm tired of pretending they don't. I'm tired of pretending your jokes don't hurt me. So I'm done. I'm not abandoning you because this is my ship. I'm asking you to leave my ship, and I'd like you to leave it now. Please leave me alone and let me handle my own company. I do not want to work with you anymore. This decision is final." I knew something was off. And that certainly sounds like a woman who intuitively knew something was off, doesn't it? So, why was he still allowed to run and sell my company even after I wrote the above in September 2020? Because he was already a step ahead of me. Sociopaths gaslight in such clever ways. They shift the blame and blatantly deny what you already know to be true, making you seem crazy for thinking your own thoughts. The following is copied, unedited, straight from his responses to my emails. "You can't possibly think I go around putting you down to the team. It's preposterous. That would be insane and completely unacceptable behavior. I wouldn't do that because it would be 100% unprofessional to do." We were both in the wrong. Before we retain lawyers here, I think it's best we talk on the phone as friends and colleagues. I am not advocating for a specific outcome one way or the other. Although I do love the team and enjoy the company and care about and value you as a person and colleague, assuming we're showing each other mutual respect and upholding healthy boundaries. That was a word salad. Ugh. I did not lie to you, so I would appreciate it if you would consider refraining from accusing me of lying when I've been relatively moral, upstanding, and honest at all times. I'm not perfect, and neither are you, but I do not go around lying to people, and I couldn't possibly act and serve more in your long-term interests on behalf of your work or companies. The people in my life who really know me say I'm a good guy. I find it sad you don't think that. I guess you live in fear or worry that every man is out to do wrong by you, be disloyal to you, or hurt your feelings or heart. I know I certainly wasn't. I am as loyal and faithful as it gets. It's hard to believe that the person who wrote those sentences also told me just a month ago that I was scamming people by hosting the Transform retreat, but that's the hot-cold dynamic for you. Even before calling attorneys, I already knew I had a case, but I really knew I had one when I serendipitously just stumbled across 20-plus emails he'd written from his company email address to a college-aged woman who'd recently broken up with him after 3 dates. I found an 18-minute voice note he'd emailed to this poor woman, demanding that she understand him and stop treating him so badly, that his medication was like cocaine, and that was why he had acted the way he had. I found her responses that he thought he'd deleted, telling him to read what you send me and then ask yourself if you would reply. His emails were dozens of paragraphs long. Not surprisingly, the majority of the sentences began with I. I think you're intentionally downplaying it to protect yourself because you feel upset with me and shocked by words last night. I need some closure from this nonsense with you that you chose to stir up between us. I gave you a chance and you blew it. I feel abused and used by you. Why would you get so butthurt about my talking to other attractive women who are into me? I feel like I lowered my standards to be with someone who acts so inconsistent and unreliable and lies to me. I bring all the elements to the table. I make friends everywhere I go, and no one really says I'm cocky except jokingly. I don't have a string of women saying I'm toxic or mean. But if you reject me and discard me callously, then I have the right to react to you and be upset about it. I've never had a woman in my life treat me the way you have, and I've dated really smart and attractive women. I feel like you're not in touch with the truth. I'm not toxic at all, and I've been super nice and kind and thoughtful to you for months, every single day without cracks or fail. I didn't mean to hurt you last night. I certainly wasn't going to buy you a car ever and wasn't serious about it. Nor was I going to move to Orlando in the first 6 to 8 months of dating unless that was what you ended up requesting. I feel really badly inside. I will lay off drinking and being selfish and hurtful. I am one of your biggest fans. I don't need to perpetuate the same hurt in return. I can control my words and be a good man. I value you as a woman and don't believe in abuse or toxicity or hurting people's feelings. I was healthy, level-headed, and stable every day that we dated. I don't have a history of abusive or toxic relationships. I did nothing wrong, so I don't need to apologize. I'm healthy to date and be with and a good guy who isn't unkind or aggressive or mean. I don't have a history of bad relationships, and I'm a gentle teddy bear with a huge heart and I'm really caring. So this was not exemplary of me or how I act in a relationship with anyone. I wish you could put yourself in my shoes and understand why I reacted the way I did. I'm a clean, healthy guy, and I don't take drugs or anything or have any issues. I can appear more aggressive or cold or dismissive or cockier or obsessive while on Vyvanse. Oh, I thought he wasn't taking drugs or having any issues. Off Vyvanse, I'm nothing like that. I could operate in life every day without taking it and be perfectly normal. I clean my cat's litter in my apartment regularly, and I treat the women in my life very well and with kindness and respect. With my own eyes, I've seen him spray Febreze into his cat's litter box instead of scooping or cleaning it. His living space has not been clean any of the times I've been there, and he certainly did not treat me with kindness or respect, at least not authentically or consistently. He turns on a dime from hot to cold. What I've learned since discovering these emails is how deeply troubled this man is, how dangerous he is, what he is capable of when he doesn't get his way. In many ways, I see how I dodged such a huge bullet by getting him out of my life and going no contact. I never ever want to see him, hear from him, or speak to him again. I will not share his name, but I will no longer silence myself out of fear. It's important to me to share at least some of these examples because of one thing: awareness. This isn't about getting back at him, it's about doing my part to spread awareness that people like this exist. I received the above-mentioned emails from him just a few weeks before he wrote the above-quoted things to the woman he'd been dating. If I had known back then that he'd treated her that way, maybe I never would have signed the paperwork giving him control over me and my company. Maybe I wouldn't have believed anything he said about being able to grow my company to $8 million in revenue in just 3 years. Maybe I would have seen how bulletproof and watertight he made his contracts so that he would always be able to win no matter what. He'd get tons of money. Even if I fired him for cause or if he sold the company, he'd still win because he'd make it impossible not to. To avoid triggering the severance clause, the buyers would have needed to offer him not just his job as CEO, but also job as a director of the entire parent company, not just Proofread Anywhere. I didn't realize that his working with the company's attorneys to craft such a pro-employee contract was meant to make it feel safer for me. Of course, my company's attorneys would make sure the company was protected, right? The bonus structure, which indicated that he could grow the company to $8 million in revenue by his 3rd year or he'd get no bonus, made it seem like he had no plans to sell. But I think it was his plan all along. He'd easily get me to sign the paperwork with these false promises of tremendous business growth. Then, once he had control and authority over me and the company, change his tune to, the industry will eventually dry up, and the only way to solve this is to sell the company, which wasn't true at all. They claimed to be your victim. One of the things Erica pointed out to me on the porch was that sociopaths will always make you out to be the bad guy. Sometimes I'd have the guts to call him out on something I knew wasn't right. Like how he'd been with the company for a full year, but somehow never knew that a fake affiliate had infiltrated our software system and injected malicious code that had allowed them to award themselves commissions they hadn't earned. More than $550,000 worth of commissions. It seemed an awful lot like he'd been negligent in his duties as CEO and hadn't bothered to familiarize himself with our affiliates, or who was getting paid every month. I believed it was negligence. I still do. He'd spent $130,000 on legal fees and insurance policies, ensuring the company would be protected if someone sued us. But he was also making sure he would make serious bank off of me no matter what. Part of those huge legal fees were in drafting his own employment contract with a huge salary, bonus, and benefits that only made sense if he grew the company to $8 million. The following are excerpts from Slack conversations. The company would have filed for bankruptcy within 3 to 6 months without all those agreements I implemented and the insurance policies I insisted on buying in spite of pushback. Forget the affiliates. I don't think you realize how destructive this could have been without that stuff in place. You're welcome. I'm thankful I wasn't around in 2019 when it happened. I blame people for not reviewing anything. Shut up, Caitlin. You're so delusional, it's scary. Pardon me for thinking that the executive, who's gotten paid nearly $500,000 for his first year of controlling my company, should have known way sooner that a scammer was siphoning hundreds of thousands of dollars from us every year. He should have known who our top affiliates were. Yes, I realize I should have known too, but I hired him to be CEO because I knew I needed to heal. I had just gotten divorced in 2019, right around the same time the scammer injected the code, and I'd spent almost 2 weeks in mental hospitals the same months he supposedly started as CEO of my company. By the time I realized, and it was me who realized, that our top affiliates weren't even real people, but what appeared to be just one guy with a bunch of fake names and PayPal accounts, who had injected malicious code into our landing pages to artificially give themselves commissions for purchases. He had already been CEO for an entire year. All he had was excuses. Even though I'd hired him partially due to his finance and business background, he never once took responsibility for not having a clue we were being scammed until I asked the question, who are these affiliates? It was always an opportunity for him to turn it back around on me and tell me how ungrateful I was for him getting a cybercrime insurance policy or how there was absolutely no negligence claim whatsoever. But thanks to finding those old emails, I'm finally certain I wasn't the bad guy. I didn't actually write this in the original draft, but as I'm saying it out to you, I wanted to interject and just say, finding these emails was absolutely proof of the negligence because he was neglecting his duties as CEO. He had just signed that paperwork and he wasn't spending his time figuring out who our top affiliates were. He was spending his time sending harassing emails to this poor young woman over a period of weeks. In November, the beginning of November and into December. He was obsessed with this woman, and he could have been emailing our top affiliates to figure out who they were. Yeah, so thanks to finding those old emails, I'm finally certain I wasn't the bad guy. I'm so grateful I stumbled across the emails where I could so clearly see the same type of abuse playing out with this young woman too. Some of the things that he said are as follows. You might want to talk to a therapist, since no one I've dated treats their partners like this. You've never had a relationship in your life, and this is precisely why. I escaped you, and I'm happy. I feel bad for the next person that you date because who wants to put up with this? It makes no sense to me that you said I treated you better than any man in a relationship or dating before and then pulled the stunt you did with me. It's really crazy. Maybe you feared I'd be unhealthy to date or something, IDK. No one can make sense of your decisions, and it feels like I just got manipulated and lied to since you never addressed the concerns I raised. I don't think anything I said to you was any more mean or abusive than anything you said or suggested to me. It feels overplayed. Like you never once said I was abusive or toxic the entire time we dated, and if that was some concern for whatever bizarre reason, wouldn't you raise it with me? I don't get you at all. Ugh. Can you guys see? Those are like blatant examples of gaslighting and manipulation. There's more. There's a whole lot more. What I'm sharing here is just tiny excerpts of these emails. Tiny excerpts. Nothing you did makes any sense, and now you've made me lose my mind trying to make sense of things. I was very nice to you and healthy when we dated. I feel so embarrassed and ashamed about how I acted and how mean I got and didn't take care of myself to look hot for you when we dated. I've changed a lot since. I don't care what weight you are. I want you to be happy and healthy and feel good about yourself and life. I hope you met someone you like because I met a beautiful princess that I shared sparks and chemistry with on so many dates and enjoyed being with, and I didn't mean to take her for granted. Anytime I start to forget and think maybe he really isn't so bad, I hereby promise to remind myself of these emails. When someone has you convinced that your name and presence in a community that you created holds no value. When he convinces you that your future with the business is in trouble because of AI and that it's the best choice for the shareholders, him and me, if we seal our bottom and eliminate risk by selling the at-risk assets. When he never introduces you to anyone he knows except a roommate he doesn't like and constantly criticized. He's working for his own best interest and just telling you that it's your best interest too. It's all lip service. It's lip service. Word salads. He doesn't mean what he says, except when he lashes out and has a meltdown via email, voice note, etc. When he does mean what he says, vitriol, that's when people recognize him. They see him without his mask on, which horrifies him. He's so scared by his real face showing that he has to launch himself into action to save face, resulting in 20 plus emails full of justification for his abusive behavior. Full disclosure, I wasn't there that night when they broke up. I only heard his side of it. I was on the phone with him. This was when I was living in Amsterdam. He'd called me one evening. We talked for 2 hours about how this 24-year-old college student had dumped him and that he'd freaked out on her and said some things he shouldn't have said, that it didn't go well, the breakup. He was in so much pain and he didn't mean it, and it's not his fault because of rejection-sensitive dysphoria, a symptom of ADHD, which is the reason he takes the Vyvanse and makes him say mean things and act cocky and mean, and she's making him feel this way. The Vyvanse, that's like cocaine and that he doesn't need, and when he doesn't take it, he's perfectly fine and operates without it, and he's chill and cool, and he's not on drugs, and he's cutting back on drinking too, and she must understand him. He can't understand her. These emails have given me so much validation. I thought it was normal for him to go on tirades when I called him out on something I didn't feel good about. I thought it was normal for me to feel depressed and useless and worthless, and at the same time so very, very lucky to have him because I couldn't have ever grown into the role of running my own company. That is legitimately what I believed about myself. I believed I had no use for anyone. I believed I couldn't run my company. I believed I had no talent or skill. I believed I had no creativity. I believed I was an idiot, a loser, and I had told him all of those things. I told him all of it. Never in a million years did I ever expect he would use any of it against me, but that's what sociopaths do. They learn all of your weaknesses and fears and vulnerabilities, and they use them as weapons. They use them as part of a game, an emotional cat and mouse game. It really doesn't hurt them at all when they've hurt someone else. What has hurt them is that they were seen. They were seen showing exactly who they are. She witnessed his meltdown, a narcissistic injury, when she told him she didn't want to date anymore. She was being honest with him about what she wanted, and he didn't like what she wanted, so he threw a fit. And she watched it. She saw the mask come off, and she watched it fall towards the floor. She watched that mask shatter into a million pieces. She saw who he really was and couldn't unsee it. They make you look crazy. It's a lot easier for sociopaths to hide who they really are if you communicate mostly using a screen. We communicated mostly via WhatsApp at first, then Signal because he didn't want me to save or screenshot any of his messages. He wanted to be able to completely delete what he was sending me. When he started working for me, we were on Slack. I deleted all of my saved screenshots of his messages to me there. But he constantly used the edit feature in Slack. How ironic. I'd started a proofreading company. I do try to proofread at least as I type each letter. Stuff slips through the cracks sometimes. It happens. Even when I make typos, and I do often, I never go back to an instant message or direct message and edit it. But he did this all the time. I watched him do it in real time. 10 seconds would go by after he wrote something, and the light gray word edited would appear next to the message. Edit. This was the exact moment I realized I wanted to call this book Edited. The problem is that you can't always know when he edited it. He could also delete any messages that he wanted whenever he wanted. He did this so often that it made me quite uneasy. He could edit anything he'd said in any conversation, and we'd had many fiery fights in Slack back in my whiskey drinking months of February to October 2021. He could edit anything he'd said, and he could do it at any time. It meant he could make me look insane. He would go back and edit the style, flow, syntax of his messages. He was not just proofreading. He was editing. He could go back and remove any vitriolic, disrespectful, and insulting words and make me look like the abusive one. I wouldn't be surprised if he did it all intentionally and created fake records. I tried to change the Slack settings on more than one occasion. It never went over well. For some reason, he believed he had the right to edit his messages, even DMs, without any restriction. He could see no valid reason I should be concerned about it. He reacted so angrily when I accused him of not acting in my best interest. He told me how disheartened he was that I was so ungrateful for everything he was doing for me because the company was in such bad shape when he came in, and if it weren't for him, the company would have gone under by now. But what about me? It was me that was in bad shape. My brain wasn't healthy. I had developed multiple stress-related illness symptoms that were becoming increasingly more debilitating. My diagnoses received between October 2018 and July 2020, the month I hired him, were as follows: ADHD, OCD, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, or bipolar unspecified, generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, panic disorder, essential thrombocythemia, which is a form of blood cancer, autoimmune encephalitis, thyroid dysfunction, and a large cyst around the pineal gland in my brain. But before I knew about the brain damage, I just thought I was a narcissist. At the same time, he had me convinced that he was my best friend. He showed me where he'd allegedly included me as a beneficiary in his living will. That's why I truly believed I could trust him with my company when I first hired him. I truly believed I was just misunderstanding him when I would react to his abuse and he'd say something to make me think I'd caused it somehow. He wasn't looking out for my best interest, and that's clear now. My best interest was in getting my brain healthy again. My best interest was not in selling the company. It was in evolving it. Because the pain I'd been feeling post-divorce, the pain that was manifesting in so many dreadful stress-related symptoms and diagnoses and pharmaceutical prescriptions, that pain didn't go away because I'd sold the company. I started feeling better because I found the Medical Medium book series and finally learned the truth about our medical system. I won't spoil it too much, but the information in those books is the reason I'm alive and healthy today and free of all the symptoms and diagnoses I had before, even the ones that were incurable. There was nothing magical about it. It was mostly about awareness, too. When you're unaware of all the toxins and poisons in the food we eat and the water we drink and in the air we breathe, then you're much more likely to suffer the consequences of that lack of awareness. If we don't know that our bodies are feeling the effects of these toxins and poisons, then we won't know to do anything about it, and that means they stay in our system longer and have far more potential to cause us health problems because they accumulate. That's why we see more health problems in older populations. The gross stuff that slowly disables our body systems, all that gross stuff accumulates. The point is, I'm free. I'm free of the sociopath now. I'm free of old beliefs that were keeping me stuck, and I'm healthy again. I've got no contact with him. Once it's finally dawned on me that he was no longer contractually bound to me or any of my work or artistic projects, the decision was easy. Once I finally realized how emotionally draining each interaction I had with him was, the decision was really easy. I want to pour my energy into sharing my story, not of escape, but of triumph. I didn't escape from him. I'm not the victim, not anymore. After the sale of Proofread Anywhere was completed in October of 2023, I started making new stuff almost immediately. It's like my creativity just came back. It was because I felt free. He would tell you I was relieved to have gotten out from under the company before some impending external threat materialized and ruined everything. I didn't want or need his approval for anything I was doing anymore. Now the story is that I must have needed to play damsel in distress for a little while, let him think I was in trouble, that he was helping, and that he was setting me free from the company, when really, he was setting me free from him. I stayed relatively quiet about getting healthier and happier throughout 2022. I knew he didn't genuinely believe me when I told him how much better I was feeling after being suicidal just a year before. His reaction always seemed artificial. I didn't tell him how much more confident and clear-headed I felt. I didn't tell him about any of my product ideas. I just quietly worked. Then, in October 2023, the sale was complete, and that same month, I set off to travel full-time in the van. I didn't tell anyone. I just started hiring people. 6 months later, selftransformation.com was live. I had started blogging again. I'd hosted my first retreat, Transform. I'd opened my first coaching program, Self-Transformation School. After 34 episodes, I transitioned the Misdiagnosed podcast to Self-Transformation Radio, which allowed me to expand on the topics I cover on the show. I'd applied for Summit Series, an invitation-only exclusive networking community I'd heard about from my mentor because, yeah, I had gotten a mentor. Or 3. I got into Summit Series, by the way. I blew up on TikTok, growing from 6,700 followers to 112,000 followers nearly overnight, and I'd done it all while living 90% of my time in an 84-square-foot van. Sure, it was a fancy schmancy van, but it was a van, and compared to a house, it can be a challenge to get work done. As I type this, I'm not on Erica's porch, I'm on Erica's sofa. She's working, I'm working, we're co-working. We're happy being alone or together, even in the same house. When we are together, it's just as much fun and enjoyable as when we're alone. You know you have a real best friend when you can be who you truly are alone while you're with them. Alone. Together. The next day, I'm now sitting with Erica at the kitchen counter eating pizza. She just gave me a delightful gift. A cheerfully colored notepad with blank lines and a bunch of little boxes. At first, it looks like a to-do list, but at the top, it said, insanely great thoughts and ideas. It was such a great reminder. It's not what we do that makes our lives happy and successful. It's not who we hire or how well our company performs that will lead to happiness or success. It's our insanely great thoughts and ideas, our energy, that make us happy and successful. Your thoughts create your reality. And that's it. That was chapter 3, at least the draft of it. It may be published in book form and a lot different. It might be a lot different, I should say, because I don't know what my editor will say. I'm trying to make this very artistic and poetic, like every bit of me as it can be, instead of trying to make it something that it isn't, something that doesn't feel authentic to me. So that means there might be some poetry, there might be some pictures, there might be some other types of visual aid to help you in the journey of this memoir. I'm really excited about sharing it with you guys when it's done. I have no idea how long I will write it. there's a lot that I'd like to include about the journey basically since I've published my last book. So there's a lot of stories that I'm going to be including. And it's not all about this particular individual either. I'm actually almost done with that part of the story. And then there's, of course, the prologue aspect of it where I get to talk about what happened before hiring that CEO in July of 2020, because I had gotten so many diagnoses. I was literally mentally ill when I hired him. There's a lot to talk about that happened before that. So thanks for tuning in. I will see you in the next episode.